In the summer of 1974, a small seasonal campground tucked deep inside a forest miles away from nearby towns opened for what would be its 6th year in operation. Camp Silverpine, officially designed as a nature retreat for teens aged 14, was known for hiking, canoe training, wilderness survival basics, and nightly bonfire storytelling. Everything about it seemed harmless. Nothing in its history suggested danger. But that year, July 18th, 1974, 6 teenagers and 1 junior counselor disappeared between midnight and 3 a.m. without any signs of struggle, forced entry, weather disturbance, or wildlife interference. Their cabins showed no panic, no broken objects, no blood, no tracks, nothing. To this day, their case remains one of the most perplexing, unsolved vanishings in North American camp history. Quietly archived, rarely mentioned, and intentionally overshadowed by larger events of that decade. It started like any normal week. A total of 42 students had joined that season, accompanied by 8 adult staff members, including a licensed wilderness medic. For the first 4 days, everything was uneventful. Scheduled hikes, lake activities, rope climbing practice, and teamwork development exercises. But on the evening of July 17th, one group, identified in official records as Cabin Group C, returned late from a supervised hike. Their junior counselor, 19-year-old Melissa Hart, reported that halfway through the trail, they heard something moving parallel to their path. Not footsteps, dragging. The sound repeated every few seconds, almost as if whatever was there didn't want to be seen, only acknowledged. She told the camp director, but he dismissed it as deer or moose movement, and instructed her not to frighten the teens, especially since they were scheduled for a forced navigation night drill the following day. But that drill never happened, because by sunrise, 7 people were gone. Around 11:30 p.m., according to 2 students from the adjacent cabin, the missing group seemed perfectly normal. They were laughing, throwing pebbles, and discussing who was best prepared for the upcoming night challenge. Nothing strange, except one thing. Cabin Group C said they heard whispering coming from the tree line earlier that evening. They didn't specify what was whispered, only that it didn't sound like English. And it didn't sound like just one person. The timeline after that becomes disturbing. At 12:31 a.m., a counselor doing routine cabin checks reported all members of Cabin C accounted for. At roughly 2:55 a.m., another round was attempted, but when he knocked on the cabin door, no one answered. He assumed they were asleep and moved on. It wasn't until 6:44 a.m. that someone noticed the door was slightly open and every bed was empty. Perfectly made. The search began instantly. Staff spread out from the cabins, calling names, searching nearby trails, checking the lake, boat dock, and even the archery shed. The forest floor was still soft from rainfall 2 days earlier, yet soil specialists later confirmed. There were no departure footprints leaving the cabin except the ones made before 10 p.m. the previous night. Even creepier, no personal belongings were missing. Not backpacks, jackets, food supplies, or survival flashlights. The only objects absent were their shoes, which was impossible to explain for any rational escape, prank, or runaway hypothesis. Helicopters, trained dogs, and mounted search teams covered a 17-mile radius for over 3 weeks. If they had walked, there would have been a trail. If they were taken, someone would have heard. If it was an animal, there would be biological evidence. But it was a runaway case. One camper had a broken ankle brace and could barely walk. The FBI interviewed staff and campers repeatedly. No answers. Some teens mentioned seeing faint lights deep inside the woods after midnight a few nights before. Not flashlights, but slow-moving circular glows floating between the trees. Others denied seeing anything. The official report labeled the case inconclusive, and the campground was permanently shut down the following year. The land was privately purchased in 1981 by an unlisted buyer who erected metal fencing and installed surveillance warning signs claiming wildlife research in progress. In 1994, 2 hunters trespassing in that same area reported hearing identical dragging sounds and low-pitched whispering. Only this time, much closer, closed instantly, and never returned. No bodies ever surfaced. No bones, no fabric. No items recovered from pawnshops, abandoned shelters, or wilderness surveys. There was no ransom, no letters, no journal entries, no closure. Some people believe it was a serial killer who lived off-grid. Others argue a hidden cave system or a sinkhole swallowed them, though there are no geological records to support it. A smaller group believes there was something else in those woods, something that didn't chase, didn't hunt, didn't panic, just waited. But the most unsettling theory suggests the missing campers never left the forest at all. They simply crossed into an area humans were never meant to enter and never returned from. If the truth is still buried somewhere inside Silverpine, someone knows why that land was quietly bought, fenced, and isolated. And if the missing were taken by nature, by someone, or by something, then the woods aren't silent. If you want to hear the other cases that were covered up with the same no evidence stamp, join me, because we're not done. Subscribe right now, turn on all notifications, and prove you aren't scared of the truth, only scared of lies disguised as explanations. I'll see you in the next investigation.